What happens when a company starts with one cool idea, then realizes the real business is hiding in the pieces they built along the way? You just hit play on 10-Minute Tech Talks, business insights and growth hacks for the time-crunched entrepreneur. And I'm your host, Jonathan Kirsting of the Pittsburgh Technology Council and Tech Vibe Radio. In this episode of 10-Minute Tech Talks, I talk with Bob Raida and Dave Rollinson of HEBI Robotics, and they share how it evolved from snake robots to modular robotics platforms designed to help people build faster, test sooner, and get real tools into the real world. Their idea is quite simple: build, test, learn, and repeat. They found value by not clinging to the original idea, but by recognizing what customers could actually use and moving toward it. Let's jump into the conversation right now.
I'm the CTO, one of the co-founders. And yeah, early on, we started doing a project with Tepper where, guy's name, I'm from
Dr. Mather.
John Mather, put together this whole class saying like, these heavy guys, they got something that's really cool. They don't really know what they're doing. They don't know what it's good for. You guys figure it out. And by the end of the project, we still didn't quite know what it was good for, but we were like, this Bob guy's awesome. So we should get him.
And here I am thinking, what course do I want to take in this last semester?
I love
I don't
it.
want to sit in class. Let's see what projects are out there.
Yeah.
Robots.
Robots
Sounds interesting.
Build stuff, get your hands dirty, innovate
Yeah.
some stuff. Absolutely. And what I love about what you guys do is you make robotics, for lack of a better term, simpler, because you make things that are modular. You could help companies build robots faster. Tell me more about how like HEBI works, just in general, like the philosophy behind the company and stuff like that.
Yeah. So the big dream, right? The pitch is like, we want to be like Lego for robots, right? We want to put it together intuitively, quickly, and widely accessible, right? And so what we have, that we've grown from the lab moving into industry is basically a set of tools that lets you build a custom robotic system or robotic tool. I like to call them robotic tools because I feel like if we do our job right, the things that people build won't be called robots. They'll just think of them as the next generation of tools.
Exactly.
And so we want to enable that, for as wide a range of people as possible. So the people that have the problems don't have to work through 3 or 4 different layers of different kinds of expertise to build the thing that they want to build. They can work with it much more directly, much more quickly.
You can simplify it, and it just helps people get to market faster. Not have to re-engineer things that don't need to be re-engineered because you already have it perfected. It's in this package, build on top of it, right?
And a word we wind up using a lot is actually demystify, right? So simplify, but like there's a lot of intimidation around robotics, because there are a ton of different expertises and skills that are needed to put it together. And it's also a field where there's like a lot of hype right now. And so it's not really, even people who are like technically versed in the field, it's not clear like what of the things they see out there are like actually ready for prime time versus, a little bit of,
when you say it hot, I mean, it's like Ellen McCarthy said, robotics is the new electricity. And that's exactly, and you guys are energized because it is so much fun. It is so cool because the possibilities, what you guys bring is pretty dang cool. Yeah. And the fact that you said Legos, come on, man. I love that. I mean, that just makes it cement to our viewers here that these are things you literally can snap together. Simple as that to make things happen and everything. And so for 10 years, you've really been riding the whole journey of Pittsburgh's robotics. I mean, obviously, we've been doing robotics in Pittsburgh for probably 40, 50 years. But I think about 10 years ago is when we really started seeing not just research, but companies, right? Seeing the HEBIs of the world kind of come out there. What's that 10 years kind of been like? I mean, first it's probably blowing your mind. You're like, oh my God, 10 years, what have I done?
It goes fast.
It does. Yeah. Absolutely. So tell me about the journey just a little bit. Like, I mean, 10 years, I'm sure it's a bit of a blur, but like any kind of key highlights around?
Yeah. So early on, HEBI was initially launched, and Dave didn't cover this even before I got involved to commercialize snake robots.
Right.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes. Okay. I'm going back 10 years now.
This goes back prior to 10 years.
Right.
And so Dave can speak to this more effectively than I can, but basically what the team learned early on was that snake robots, as cool as they are in the lab, you get outside the lab and they're just not as practical as other form factors to really get things done.
Right.
At the same time, the tools that Dave and his team had built to make it easier to build, repair, modify, reconfigure snake robots, those tools started to find their way into other robots.
I see.
And so the light bulb went off. Well, maybe these building blocks are valuable. And that's when they went to Dr. Mather at Tepper. And
Gotcha. So they see that and like, let's take this and see if we can actually build that into a company.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That just goes to show you how the journey works. That you think you're starting out with one thing, but then as you start actually applying, things start changing. But you're adapting with it and seeing the need and then building it.
And then you rinse, wash, repeat, keep doing that.
Exactly.
So early on, we kept the lights on by selling to researchers. So researchers basically saw examples of robots created with our system and quickly saw the value in it. And so researchers all over the world and academics use our tools to create all kinds of crazy robots. And a big part of our journey was figuring out how to live off of that for as long as we can. But then where do we go with it?
How do you actually get that to a market that's got some real depth to it that you can really start making money at? A side story is going to have to be, we got to talk about probably what is the craziest thing you've seen someone build. I don't know if you're parts, but we can get back to that. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm thinking, man, I can only imagine when you selling that to research. So the idea that as you evolve now, like you have customers outside of that. And what's really cool is that, I mean, I'm talking about like NASA, which is like, okay, I think you've reached prime time when you are working with NASA, for crying out loud. Can you tell me more about how you're working with them?
Yeah. So NASA's been a customer. JPL, there are a lot of space related organizations that have been customers from the early days.
Exactly.
One of the craziest robots that I can think of is one that actually NASA built kind of early on in our history. And they actually drove the design of the first larger version of a module.
Okay.
But it's called the Super Ball bot, and it's there's I'm trying to describe it. Maybe you'll be able to put up a video or something else. But if you behind the Carnegie Art Museum, there's a sculpture out there, and it's a bunch of like poles that are held together with wire, but it climbs up into the air.
Exactly.
Even though it's held, so it's called tensegrity. So you have these wires, but if you pull them right, you can actually lift something up and give it structure by pulling on those wires. So they have a robot that's like that. But the wires are all actuated with our actuators. So it's this thing that like collapses down to a thing that looks like a bundle of Lincoln logs, but then it unfolds into this like thing that looks like a 3-dimensional hashtag with strings and everywhere, and it tumbles and moves itself around because they're designing it for like icy moons, like Enceladus, where like that there's gonna be these weird cracks, huge. It can crawl over and through weird obstacles, and it's hard to control. So it's good for they're exploring it, in the early stages for environments where you have no clue what you're going to be landing down into. But so a lot of our tools have been used for sort of ground-based prototyping for that. Other ones like JPL made something that went into a glacier up in Canada or Greenland or something.
Wow.
Again, for looking into the missions that are still going to be like 10 or 20 years out, right? But all the ground-based prototyping that lets you actually make a real thing, because that's sort of one of the key parts of the HEBI philosophy is like you need to test the real thing as close as you can as early as possible. Get out of that lab,
right?
Because it's very easy to spend millions of dollars and tons of people's time and years of time on something that turns out wasn't a problem you needed to solve.
That is a smart reminder for any entrepreneur. Sometimes the first idea is not the business, but the capabilities you build along the way just might be. HEBI's story is a great lesson in product market fit, staying adaptable and testing early before you burn years on the wrong problem. If you want to hear my entire interview with HEBI Robotics, click on the link in the description, and I look forward to seeing you on the next 10